at this point, which is about 5 minutes into open. Sridhar Sivaram is investment director at Enam Holdings. He's with us in our studios here. Sridhar, great to have you with us here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Appreciate your time. You know, I just want to start with the PSU space.
Sure.
And I wanted to do this for a while. I think you're coming back to us after a while. You remember we we were on the newsroom floor, the
yes,
three of us, and we
back.
spoke with you. That was on the 7th of December. And we were talking about, and I asked you, what's the best way to play it? And you said, well, maybe a PSU fund does it. So I looked at the SBI mutual fund, PSU fund NAV. It was at about 21, 22, at about 29 this morning. I mean, 28 and a half or something. It's a neat 20% kind of a return that we've had in that space via a mutual fund entity. I mean, if you bought some of the big winners, I mean, you're up big time. But what from here, Sridhar, in your opinion?
So after the interview, I sent the interview clip to the CIO of SBI Mutual Fund saying that I'm marketing for your fund. You guys should do a better job. Look at the fund size, it's hardly anything. Yeah, but
and it's done well since. It's done well since.
Yeah, so I guess the flavor has now sort of picked up.
Yeah.
I would say that within our office itself, now we have a lot of difference of opinion on PSUs. Obviously, because stocks have done so well.
Yeah.
So I think I still own the fund, so I want to put a caveat that I personally own the fund. I'm still owning it. So that tells you where I'm positioned vis-a-vis a lot of my colleagues in my office. I think the story is not as clear now because some PSUs have really gone through the roof. The valuations are very high. In some cases, you can say that they're fair value, and from here maybe earnings growth will determine how they will play out. But normally what happens when you have a leader or a market leadership which comes up to a sector, it doesn't fade away in 3 years. I think it goes on for 5 to 7 years. How it plays out from here, only time will tell. I think this theme stays. We will find new leaders like we are seeing in utility space. There is story picking up there. So I wouldn't say that the entire story is now over, done and dusted. But the pace at which the returns were over the last 3 years, surely that will come off. I mean,
Sridhar, so money is still coming in, right? I think there was it was the SBI Energy Fund, which was launched, right?
Yeah,
I think it's collected about 7,000 crores.
Yeah.
And there are what? I mean, 12, 13 investable names in that space,
yeah.
realistically speaking. So,
but Prashant, as we've seen, money came into the new age stocks also.
Yeah.
Eventually, what determines the return?
You're not surely suggesting that these will suffer the fate.
No. I'm saying eventually what determines the stock price is the earnings. So some of the new age technology companies have now changed their business model and they're showing path to profitability.
No, my limited point is for now money is coming.
Yes.
And mutual funds will not sit on cash. They'll have to buy.
Yeah, they will buy.
So,
but they are large. Energy as a space, if you see, they are very large companies and they're very liquid. These are not the small and mid cap like what you see in, say, defense or in some of the other thematic plays where the liquidity is an issue. I don't see liquidity being an issue that because of the large NFO or something that stock price goes up, I'll be very surprised.
Okay, by the way, don't lose sight of what's happening in the market. The mid cap index is under quite a bit of pressure, actually 1% knockdown already. The index is down about 400 points. But Sridhar, hi, welcome to the show. I think one of the high points of your career will be catching the bottom in the PSU banking space. I remember we had this chat about almost 2 years ago, right?
Yes.
In our Smart Money show. But kudos to you for that. Help us pick the next leaders of this rally. Where do you see value now in the market?
Yeah, so if I look at, the other theme which I'm very excited about is actually the entire energy space, which is the power energy space, which I'm saying. So if we look at today, we have about 220 gigawatts of thermal power. And from what I understand from experts in the industry, that we are already hitting peak capacity every day during, between 6 and 8 p.m. every day because we haven't invested in thermal. Our wind energy will double in the next 4 years from say 40-45 gigawatts to around 80-85. Our solar will triple in the next 3 years from about 70 to 220. And this is a space where you can pick and choose whatever you like because it's not just the people who are setting up the power. You have ancillaries who are the equipment suppliers. You have transmission. So you can pick right from the utility to the to the last guy who supplies the equipment.
So there are these names, right? There's Startup Power, NTPC, JSW Energy, all these guys. But many of these stocks have rallied quite a bit also. But you think it's still nascent stage?
Yeah, so as I said, it depends on what your outlook for earnings is. You can pick from either the utilities, which you named, or you can pick, say, either the wind or solar. There are a number of names there where you're seeing, order books really coming through in a large way. You can look at transformer guys, or you can look at transmission guys who put up transmission lines. The entire space is looking very exciting only because the government is also pushing. So after, I would say, the last cycle when we saw this whole bump up for power, I think it's only now that we are serious investors and even the companies are putting up capacity. So I think that space is looking very exciting. If you ask me that after PSUs, if I'm excited about a segment, this looks very exciting.
All right. Hi, Sridhar. Good to see you. When, as you enter the studio, I think all of our minds go back to that conversation we had on the PSU names, and that PSU mutual fund. I'll tell you, I missed the trick in the book because I didn't have exposure there. But I took the advice on gold and I picked up some sovereign gold bonds as well. That aside, I wanted to ask you about this PSU versus private sector banks.
Sure.
After a very, very long time, it's not just a stock price move, but even fundamentally, if I look at an SBI, the way the loan growth is shaping up, the ROEs at current reckoning, it's matching HDFC Bank for this year. And they're also better positioned on the CASA side. At current prices, one has done very well, one is yet to catch up. What would your preference be, particularly from the banking space? I ask you this because there is comfort on valuations.
Yeah. So I think for the financials in general, I think the next 2 quarters may be slightly difficult because liquidity in the system is very tight. There is a scramble for deposits.
Yes.
And I would say banks which have a better CD ratio are better positioned to move forward because RBI is also in a very subtle way hinting at banks to bring their CD ratios to a more reasonable level. So if your CD ratio is very high, you'll have to reduce your loan growth. If I put everything together, the private sector may struggle for another 2 quarters, but eventually they'll come because these are great franchises and they have all the building blocks, and we are going through a credit cycle where your credit cost is almost at the bottom right now. I don't see that really going through the roof, but it may inch a bit. So which is why I said the next 2-3 quarters may be slightly challenging. During this period, maybe the PSUs could do slightly better, but I look at the financials as a basket and see which are the stocks which I like from a bottom up.
Yes.
So when I look at my own personal portfolio, I have more PSUs than private, but I do have private sector banks also. But this can change in say 3-4 months. If liquidity improves, the private sector suddenly starts to look far better.
Yes.
But I think financials may struggle for another 2 quarters. That's my
But so
personal
incremental money would go what? I mean, as of now, PSUs are outpaying private sector in your portfolio. But if you do allocate money from today onwards, would it be even Stevens, or would you continue what you've done? PSU.
I will continue.
What?
Okay, you will continue. Anything else? Energy space is doing well, you're saying, whether it's thermal, whether it's renewable. Any other spaces that look attractive to you now with a 12 to 18 month horizon?
I think the rest, we've been bullish on the manufacturing space. That is the other thing, especially after the China plus one story is continuing. There was a small blip, especially on the chemical side. But if you just look at the overall manufacturing space, be it on the pharmaceutical side, be it on the chemical side, even on the auto ancillary side, we are seeing defense is the other one, where we are seeing huge order books coming up, not only because of domestic orders, also orders coming from international, especially the export orders. It's a very large space. You have to identify stocks on a bottom-up basis, but that's the other space that we are quite bullish on.
Let me just sneak in one final one,
Sure.
Sridhar. If you let's leave the markets aside, but if you're allocating money to different asset classes at these elevated valuations, or post the heady run that we've seen in equities, what would your allocation be to equities? And within that, how much would be large, mid, and small as of now?
I think asset allocation to equity depends on the risk profile of individuals, right? So my risk profile may be very different from your risk profile. So it's very
Someone who's
difficult
looking at, say, for the long.
So I think the general trend is that 1 minus your age should be your, or 100 minus your age should be your equity allocation.
I've
So
got
I
that.
think that's a standard practice. I wouldn't want to change that. But my profile may be very different because I'm in the equity markets, obviously. So my allocation to equity will be far larger.
All right, but thank you for that thought and that advice as always. Sridhar, have a great day.
Thanks
That's
for
the word coming in on the markets. Sridhar also mentioned some of these manufacturing companies. We have in focus now Dixon